Hi, my name is Alexa, and I'm super duper excited to be on the Nebula podcast today. Just had a really wild schedule. I recently moved. So,
oh, no way.
The whole uprooting of life. It's,
where'd you move to, if I can ask? I'm in the same boat too. I'm in the same boat myself.
Really? Okay. Well, I'll go first.
Yeah, you go first. I'll go second. I promise I'll tell you.
Okay. You know, I feel like we're in like a negotiation. Like, okay, here's what
I know.
do.
Here are my lawyers. Your lawyers are there. Here's the contract. Let's have it signed.
I moved from Dumbo to Brooklyn Heights, so only a couple of blocks, but I needed more space, and I found this really, really magical place. I feel so lucky to be here. I have a huge amount of space for New York. I think more than like 3 of my friends' apartments put together. I just totally lucked out.
That's cool. That's especially for New York. Like, how big was your space before? I imagine it was the size of a closet.
I mean, it definitely felt that way. It was pretty sizable. It was 950 square feet. And the new one is, my God, I don't even know if I want this out there. The new one is 5,000 square feet.
Wow. That's a creative space right there. Holy shit.
Yeah.
Good for you.
It is. Thank you.
Moving
I
up
was
in the
just
world.
really lucky. And listen, I've been running my, so I have an antique jewelry business, and I've been running my business for about, I'm in my 5th year right now.
Wow.
It's really successful, and I'm very, very lucky. I work very hard, but I feel blessed to be what I'm doing. And I decided that I needed to do music, or I was going to die with a lot of regret. So, yeah.
Yeah, good for you. I mean, there's so much to unpack there. So to rebuttal you, I'm moving to San Diego.
Please.
So I'm in Los Angeles, California.
Congratulations.
Yeah. You know, it's been a long time coming. So a little bit about me. I'm from LA. So I was born and raised here in Los Angeles. I've had the opportunity to travel to a lot of places. I love New York. New York is gorgeous. And I came close to moving to New York a couple of years ago too, but some other things happened and didn't work out at the time. But I visit frequently. But I think, and I feel like this is the same for almost everyone in LA, the pandemic really just put a lot of things into perspective, especially where I'm currently at, and the fact that I do a lot of things virtually. I just, I put it into perspective, and I'm thinking, I don't really need to be here as much anymore. A lot of my family is here, so I don't ever have a place to stay, So my partner is from San Diego. We have family down there, and I just, we just decided, you know what, let's go down there. So we're in the process of moving our stuff. We don't officially move for like 2 months, but slowly moving some things down there. It's not a big deal, but I'm super excited to get away from the traffic, to be honest with you. Like,
that's amazing. I feel that. I understand. I mean, LA, to be totally honest, LA is not my favorite place. I don't think I would ever really want to move to LA. Which is like a very controversial opinion.
Oh, not at all. Not at all. I'm curious though. Why don't you like it? I'm curious.
Yeah, I don't like LA. Well, I'm a New Yorker. I grew up in New York. I've lived in New York my whole life.
East Coast, West Coast.
It's an East Coast, West Coast thing. I find everything to be far too spread out. Something that's an absolute necessity for me is that I be able to like walk to a coffee shop, preferably like 6. I gotta be within walking distance. I feel very passionately about that. And it's very, very hard to achieve that in LA. It is so spread out. It's super like smoggy, hot, trafficky. It's like, I don't know. It's not my vibe so much. So I actually have lived with my partner. We lived through quarantine together, and we're, very much in love, very happy, but we've decided that we want to live separately for a while. And that was a really amazing decision, I think, for both of us, because we went from living with our families to living together. And we didn't really we both went to Brooklyn College. That's how we met. And so we didn't have that opportunity for true independence of like, okay, I'm going to, do whatever I want and I don't have anybody to answer to. Like, we never had that. So I think we're very excited for the next chapter as well of dating. We're going to go back to dating each other. I'm very psyched about this.
That's cool. Can I ask you about that a little bit? I don't know if you're
Yeah,
comfortable speaking about that because that is so
absolutely.
fascinating. First of all, do you mind if we keep going like this? Normally I have like an
Yeah.
intro, but I love that we're just chatting.
No,
Is that
just
okay?
roll. Just roll.
I
Yeah.
love that. Thank you for being open to do that. One thing that I like about you, first of all, and I could get a lot of things wrong. So if I ever do, feel free to cuss me out and be like, "Hey, fuck you." don't say that. That's wrong.
Great.
Don't venture there. That's all on the table. You're more than welcome to do that. But
Oh,
one thing that
cool.
I'm gathering from you again, I love New York, and I feel like, especially in this country, there are a lot of what would you say? It's like people just assume how people behave. Yeah, stereotypes. There you go. I've completely forgot that name, right?
Yeah.
But when you think of certain parts in this country, you think of like California, you think of like surfers, and you think of like Kardashians, you think that Valley talk. I think when people think of New York, they think of the very stereotypical Brooklyn accent. They think of just, hey, I'm walking here, I'm going to yell at you for doing stuff. And I got to say, part of that is true based on my experience, but New York is incredibly diverse. There's so many cool people there, a lot of smart people in New York. You don't strike me as a New Yorker based on just the way you speak and the way that you sound. And I'm not saying that's a good or a bad thing. I just think it's so fascinating. You are very unique in your personality. So let me break it down a little bit because there's a lot of things I want to ask you about, if that's okay. First of all,
Please.
where are you from? Are you from New York or are you from somewhere else?
No, I am. I was born and okay, wait. Before we hit that, that's hilarious because literally the minute before I got on the phone with you, I was editing a TikTok and I do a lot of accents. I was an actor for many years and like I have 1,000 accents that I can do. And
No
one of them
way.
yeah, one of them's a heavy Brooklyn accent from my dad because my parents are lifelong New Yorkers and my father has a certain New Yorker drawl. And I learned to imprint that when I was a kid and I was always very good at it. And like now we're in the time of cancel culture. So I'm
Yeah.
so freaked out about certain accents that I can do. And I like have to, I totally have to like yank some of them and I won't even put up content. I'll make it and then I'll be like, nope, I cannot put this out into the world. And I was just going over this in my head. It's so crazy that you said this because my father, he talks a little bit like this and he's got like that heavy Brooklyn. I learned it my whole life. I grew up around people who talk like this. And it's almost associated with a lack of intelligence, which it in no way, shape, or form is. It's just an affectation. It's just an accent that some people have. And
Yeah.
so I was just freaking out if I should publish this video today where I use that accent, even though I am a born and bred and raised New Yorker. So my mother was born in Paris, France. She came to New York when she was 6. And she's lived in New York her whole life. My father was born in Flatbush, raised in Flatbush, lived in New York his whole life. They almost moved our family upstate to Orange County when I was 8. They were going to buy a house, but the deal fell through, and we stayed. And but I did grow up. Don't worry about that. I did grow up going to France
Like,
because
hello.
my mother has so much French family. I grew up going to France constantly. So that's why I sound, I think, the way that I do. I was raised very European.
Wow. Hopefully that wasn't an important call.
No. That was just the doorbell. I have my staff upstairs is handling it. So
Gotcha. Wow. Okay. First of all, your background is so incredible already. Like European, the accents that you can do, which by the way, I was smiling. I was grinning from ear to ear when you were doing your Brooklyn accent because it's so good. And I gotta say, I gotta just take a moment to address what you said because it is absolutely on the money what you just said about cancel culture and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Like we don't even have to get into it, but like the idea
true.
where I resonate a little bit, just to kind of give you a little bit more about my background. I'm Hispanic.
Please.
I'm not technically, I'm Guatemalan. Both my parents were born in Guatemala and they immigrated to the United States,
Cool.
back in the 80s. Yeah, it's a super cool story. I don't know a lot of Guatemalans, even though there's a lot of them here in the U.S. I feel like in terms of Latin culture, the U.S. as a whole really just identifies, Latin Americans as like Mexican. Let's just be honest. And I don't blame people for that because it's just Latin America is so huge that it's just easier to just think of our neighbors and, you know, Latin Americans are that. But I'm Guatemalan technically. But I'm on the same boat where when people hear me speak, they don't think I'm Guatemalan. Like that's just the reality, which is why I wanted to bring it up to you, because I think it's so fascinating whenever I hear someone speak, whenever I see someone's mannerisms. There's more to someone's story than just the way they look, than just the way they behave, just the way they speak. It's a amalgamation of a whole bunch of things. And so the fact that you speak the way you do, the way that you're successful, the way that you're an entrepreneur, you can do 1,000 different voices. that's just, I bet that's just the tip of the iceberg for you, isn't it? In terms of like your personality.
Yeah, I mean, I actually feel like I've lived so many lives already. It's crazy that you should say that because you know, regarding most of America thinking, most of the US thinking that Latinx culture is mostly Mexican is unbelievable, because I think all of this is based in education. So I went to Brooklyn College and I am a bit indecisive. So I actually spent 7 years in college, undergraduate. I technically don't even have a degree, even though I have enough credits to have graduated 3 times over. Yep. I was working. I was running like my parents' business and then my business while I was in school. And I never ended up actually graduating, but I studied art history. And this was the big thing that I studied. And one of my teachers, oh my God, I like had a hugest crush on her. I was in love with her. Her name is Lauren Grace Kilroy, and now Eubank, she married. But
shout out to you, Lauren.
Oh my God.
You're a really good teacher, Lauren.
Professor Kilroy, I had the hugest crush on you and I think you're amazing. She actually specifically studied the art of Latin America, Mesoamerica. And so she taught me and so many other students about the incredible, rich, diverse, ancient and colonial and modern artistic culture of South and Middle America. And I took this one class called Death and Dying in Mexican Art, and it blew my mind. And I really, really wanted to study. So I started learning more and more specifically about the art of Mesoamerica and all of the different, you know, countries and cultures that encapsulates. And I just feel like this is a huge gaping hole in American education. Very few people learn this. And it just, oh my God, I can't even tell you. I think it's crazy.
Yeah. Okay. First of all, I am absolutely having so much respect for you. I already had respect for you to begin with, but I love your pursuit of knowledge. Like, it's very apparent that you know a lot. I love that about this. Can I ask you, and here's the thing, and you're going to laugh about this, but I would argue a lot of Latin American people, a lot of Latinx people, we probably don't know a lot about our own history either. Did you ever see that documentary? Not documentary. It was like a one-off episode on Netflix a year or two ago by, what's his name? A famous actor. He's Hispanic. He comes on the Marvel movies. I don't remember his name at the top of my head, but it was basically an episode where he, kind of like what you just described, he goes through the history of Latin America from as far back as we can remember to where it currently is now. And it is such a great experience. If nobody's ever seen it, definitely go look at it. I don't remember the name. I apologize.
Oh my
guys.
God, are you gonna link it? I hope you link it. I'm
gonna link it. I don't remember it. I feel so bad that I don't remember it. But like the whole cool aspect of this, which thank you so much for bringing this up. I think it's so cool of you. Just the vast majority of history that is lost in terms of what the Americas are, not just the United States, but we're talking about North America, South America, which is such a huge landmass. There's so much history here.
Unbelievable.
Unbelievable amount of history. And let's be honest, I think in the way the American system is set up, I don't know, I can't speak about European systems or other systems. You might actually know a little bit more than me, but based off of my experience, the American side of the history of it all, I'm sorry, not America's, North and South America, very small in what we learn. I think a lot of it is on like Europe, a lot of the wars that we've kind of been through. And then when we talk about the Americas, we speak about like the Incas, the Aztecs, and it's all like summed up into like a couple chapters, and that's about it, even though it's so massive. It's a huge part of our history here. I'm wondering, if you don't mind me asking, why are you so interested, or were so interested in these, I guess, sections of history? excuse me, because I've talked to many people, smart people like you, people who know about history, and obviously we all like what we like. I'm a huge World War II buff. I love World War II. But for whatever reason, and I'm kind of feeling ashamed of it a little bit, but whatever, we all have our paths. I never really was inspired to really dive into my own history. I'm curious what made you so interested in this side of history and other sides of history. Clearly, you know a lot. So I'm just wondering.
Well, that's the thing. I kind of love it all. And I've had a lot of conversations with like people in the music industry recently about like tagging down a genre, and me having a lot of difficulty doing that. Like I'm really bad at, I'm kind of a genre hopper. I go all over because I love it all. I really love, oh my God, I really love the history of the Americas, because I think when I was in school, I had a really special opportunity afforded to me. Like I was talking about my professor. I mean, if she wasn't at Brooklyn College when I was there, I would never have had the fascination to learn about this, because she would organize museum trips and be like, hey guys, we're going to go to the Brooklyn Museum and we're going to go see this exhibit of Incan art that is only here for 6 weeks, and we have to go and see it. And because there was someone in my life, there was someone in my educational life who was like, I think you'd be interested in this. I said, absolutely. And I want to get into it. And then once I got a taste for it, I mean, there are some unbelievable snippets of history. Like, did you know? Okay, yeah. So this is really cool.
Teach me stuff. I want to learn. I'm going to write it all down.
I hope I don't get this wrong. This is being recorded, so I really hope that I remember this correctly. But there was a Mayan ritual. I believe it was a snake goddess ritual where 2 high priestesses would enter into this central circle, that, this magically drawn circle, because all of this is about ancient spiritualism and so forth. And they would create this kind of concocted potion that was a mixture of blood and chocolate. And when they drank it, they would have visions, and they would have scribes record the things that they saw. And they felt that these were prophecies, they were visions, they were like past life recollections and things like that. And I became so obsessed with this that I scoured the entire world of antiquity to find a bowl, because there were these special bowls that they would drink out of, that they would drink this mixture out of. And I found one, and I gifted it to Brooklyn College, because I was like, this is amazing. And I have access.
Where'd you find it, if I can ask?
Yeah, of course. I found it through a friend of a friend who was an antiquities dealer, because my whole business is based in antiques, and my parents were antique dealers before me. And I knew that I could get access to this stuff in a way that other people couldn't. So I love it, because I love the stuff. I love the artifacts. I loved going to museums and seeing everything behind glass, but I felt really sad that it was behind glass and that I couldn't touch it and that I couldn't be around it. And so it kind of like all fueled itself. That was, something that really fascinated me. And besides, like, come on, who doesn't like love, who doesn't fall under the spell of an ancient ritual where you drink like chocolate blood? Like, I just think it's so awesome.
Wow. What was that substance? Is that like similar to ayahuasca or something like that? Do you know?
I mean,
I feel uneducated just assuming that. I
like all that we have is what is the codes that we've been able to crack from like Mayan glyphs, like that seem to indicate that this is what happened, and the artwork that depicts it.
Yeah. Have you ever been to any of these sites? I imagine you probably have, but I'm just curious.
I haven't. I have never, and I would love to go. There are so many places that I want to go. This is why I want to do music. I want to tour, and I want to go, see I want to go tour and do music, but I also kind of want to be an archaeologist. So this is,
You know who you're describing, right? I'm not sure if you're like a video game person at all, but you're describing Laura Croft.
Oh my God, I know. I used to cosplay Laura Croft because that's my shit.
I mean, you're an archaeologist in a way. You love history. You collect all these antiques. Not only that, you sell it. You're becoming well off. Like, you are Laura Croft in a weird way. You're kind of trying to make that into a reality in your life.
I think I actually do. I really do just want to be Lara Croft. I think she's incredible, and she's a super heroine. And that is like, I'm big on that. I'm big on kind of like the superhero vibe. I do play video games, and I did play Lara Croft video games, and I love the movies. And yeah, it's funny you should say that. No one's ever like made that connection before, but it's very true.
It sounds like an obvious connection. I'm surprised no one's ever made that connection, especially with your love with, I mean, I apologize that we're not talking a lot about music, but here's the thing.
No,
for me,
totally fine.
Well, that's the thing. Like, to me, to discover someone's personality is 100% tied to the music that they make. And I appreciate you allowing me to explore this because it's so fascinating. And I think your fans should absolutely know what goes on in your brain because it's so fascinating. I have not ever had the opportunity to talk to someone who's an expert and knows about antiques. Like, to me, the closest thing I ever got to knowing about antiques was probably the Antiques Roadshow. If you ever saw that on PBS years ago, I remember my parents used to put it on all the time. And it was so cool to watch these people bring, like, I have this old chest that's been in my attic for 50 years. And they're like, wow, this is worth $500,000 because it was owned by so-and-so. I have this painting. But like underneath all that, there's this appreciation for history. And I think there is so much that we can learn from our history. And it 100% contributes to who you are as an individual. I'm curious, is there a part of maybe like, I don't know, French history or European history, but I know that you did spend some time over there and you are fascinated by what's going on in the Americas. In your experience, especially as an antiques dealer, is there an obscure or a weird part of history that really boggles your mind that you're like, oh shit, I don't know anything about this, but I think it's important? Could be from France, could be from Europe, could be from Latin America. Just like we discussed about this ritual that you talked about. Is there another aspect of history that you don't think that we don't talk about enough as a society or as America or whatever? I don't know. I'm kind of rambling here, but I'm so fascinated by this. It's so cool.
Of course. Well, first of all, so my mom was an expert on the Antiques Roadshow. She handled antique dolls because that was her specialty. So yes,
was she really?
Yeah.
Wow.
I think we went to like 3 antique road shows or something. She would bring me with her, and she only made it onto the show, I think once or twice, but she would take me and I would be there while people were like bringing the pieces in. Like, I think I was like 14 or 15 at the time. When I was younger, I went to private school, but then I had a really bad experience. I was like, Mom, I want to be homeschooled and I just want to like travel with you. And I just still don't want to be here anymore. She was like, okay, cool. No problem. As long as you keep up with your studies, like you can come wherever. So we did. I traveled a ton during my childhood, and my adolescence. And then I kept traveling until I got a bit older, and then I started traveling for work. So I traveled to London and Paris, pre-Panini, as they say. I used to travel every 6 to 8 weeks. I would go and buy stock abroad, or I would like go and research pieces abroad. I would find out about jewelry by seeing exhibits. I would fly. Like one time I flew into London to see this incredible exhibit of Stuart period paintings, just to study the jewels that were being worn in the works. So to say, I grew up in the habit of traveling, and it's so informed my life. I wish that I could have done more of it, but now thankfully that the world is reopening, I have a lot of plans to go around and see a lot of things. So something that recently has fascinated me is the French Revolution. My aesthetic, I think the way that people see me, especially online, and my presentation as an artist, draws a lot of derivative from Marie Antoinette, because I think that she is a woman who really got the short end of the stick in every way, shape, and form. She was kind of undereducated when she was younger. And then she was married into a family. It's almost kind of like, in a way, she was the OG Kardashian,
Ooh, interesting comparison.
Like, think about it. She's the original Kim Kardashian. She was very she didn't necessarily know that her life was going to be what it was. And then something happened to her where she was thrust into the spotlight, and she had to kind of like sink or swim. And she had to make decisions, and she had to marry, she was basically offered into marriage with the Dauphin of France, the Prince of France. And then she became La Dauphine, the woman who was going to be the Queen of France. And then she became the Queen of France, and nobody really prepared her for the journey. Now, if she had had an amazing press team at the time, I'm sure that they would have said, get into politics, get educated. You have to go to school. You have to do all these things. But no one really cared to do that for her. And she was alone. So what she had were a handful of friends and an awfully lush bank account. And so she just created fashions. She was very creative. She was like, I want this dress and I want this hat and I want you to do my hair this way. And she was really kind of like her own stylist. So she really fascinates me. And then she was very easily vilified by the public. Like it was very easy for them to vilify her as soon as France started having financial trouble. And I think that it's very much kind of the same thing that's going on politically now, which is that the rich are so massively rich and the poor are very, very poor. We have a massive socio-political class disparity. And I think that that's why the French Revolution and that history feels very current to us right now, because we're seeing it with the 1% and the multi-billionaires and all of that. And not to say that, one can be really on either side of this issue other than to just see that it's happening. And I like to interpret it in art.
Yeah. I got to say, there's so much interesting things here because I'm just going to level with you. I don't know a lot about the French Revolution or Marie Antoinette. And hopefully you can educate me a little bit because there's so much fascinating things here. Is she the one who said, let them eat cake, or was that the one, or is that England? I don't quite remember.
She is the one who, okay, so that's not something that she actually said per the history that we know, but it was something that the tabloids said she said, which is very interesting. There was a massive, there was kind of like a massive presence of French tabloids, and the tabloids at the time would say these terrible things, and they would make the most humiliating statements about her. They would sexually shame her. They accused her of being a lesbian. They accused her of like having an insatiable sexual appetite, and that she would say hateful things like, the peasants are coming begging for bread, let them eat cake. And there's no evidence that she ever even held those sentiments. She was quite sheltered from politics, and she didn't really have opinions or was allowed to have opinions at her husband's table. She kind of was just an observer, which I think is really, really fascinating. And now with Gen Z, like this generation, the current world really, what you have now, I think, is a lot of pressure on, let me double back right now, because I'm a person of TikTok. I'm a TikToker. I guess I gained the majority of my notoriety early on in TikTok. I kind of feel like a spokesperson sometimes.
You kind of have to be, especially with TikTok, but yeah.
You do. You totally do. There's something called bimbo talk, which I feel like intersects with my work very directly. So bimbo talk is the land of, it's a place where women get to say, hey, and also there's himbo talk for men and thembo talk for the non-binary set. So kind of across the board, bimbo talk is sort of a place where people can say, I don't have to know math. I don't have to know, how to do all of these things. I don't have to be ridiculously well educated for you to see that I have value as a person. And I believe that Marie Antoinette was kind of the OG spokesperson of bimbo talk in a way, because she didn't know and she didn't have to know, but she was vilified because she was beautiful and she had something that other people wanted, which was access to fashion and, money. I know we went left really quick, but
no. Please continue. I'm absorbing all this. This is so fascinating to me. It's so cool.
it's a really interesting parallel that I've noticed. And I think that that's why my work on TikTok, kind of in my 18th century dresses, in these ridiculously luxuriant clothes and all of that, like, so for example, I think Chrissy Chalpecca is the originator of Bimbo Talk on TikTok. If you are not following her, I don't really know what you're doing with your life, but she's incredible. And she will
go
say,
follow her now, guys. Please do.
Yeah,
right
go
now.
follow her right now. She's unbelievable. And her thing kind of is capitalism is the devil. I'm hot and I don't need to know math. And like, it kind of blows my mind. I love it. And I've always thought that the work that I was doing kind of was in line with that, because Marie Antoinette, similarly, she was beautiful and she was kind of like living her life, and she didn't need to sort of do more than what she was doing. Obviously, if she was alive today, she'd be ridiculously politically active and she'd be like, eat the rich and all that goodness. But it was kind of wild to sort of see that parallel come up recently as I was doing more of my own research.
Yeah. Okay. I gotta say, and I gotta tip my hat to you, because in my experience, once in a lifetime, there's an individual who like takes a reference from history and really converts it into something that modern history or modern day can relate to. And I just gotta really just point out how brilliant it is of you to take inspiration from Marie Antoinette and create a brand new persona around this inspiration. I mean, there's arguments on both sides on how creativity runs in our DNA, how everything is technically borrowed at some point. But my whole concept of this, which is what fascinates me about you, you are, like I mentioned, you're Laura Croft. You are an antiques expert who took this knowledge of Marie Antoinette on how she was really given the short end of the stick. Like, I don't know anything about the French Revolution. I really should, but you're teaching me this stuff. I mean, you saw, I asked about the let them eat bread part. That's what I thought. That's what I was taught back in history. And I must be wrong. And what really fascinated me about where this conversation was going is you brought up this concept, which I may get this wrong. So please, if I'm getting this wrong, let me know. But you mentioned like Bimbo Talk. And I'm assuming that's like a hashtag, or is that like a section in TikTok? God, I sound like an old person, but it might be a movement.
I mean, I think you could definitely find it if you search the hashtag Bimbo Talk. It will come up.
Okay. What I love about this is you're absolutely right that where we're currently at in history, where we're currently at as a society, where things are moving, there are a lot of people who have for a very long time felt that they couldn't speak up on both what we would consider good and bad sides, right? Regardless of whatever that means. Everyone nowadays feels empowered to say what they want to say, which I think is a beautiful thing. We haven't had this ever happen in human history. And what I love about Bimbo Talk, which, if I can be honest, is when women and men can speak out what they feel, what I end up finding is at a certain point, there comes this moment, specifically for men. I'm going to speak for men because I can't speak for women. Let's be honest. I'm not a woman. I don't know any of the issues that you go through on a daily basis. Even if I try to understand, there's no possible way I could ever feel like a woman. But as a man, I've had the opportunity to really grow from a lot of my own issues. And I noticed that as I spoke up, as I expressed what I felt, there was a moment where I was able to reflect on why I was saying the things I was saying. And it was very obvious to me, like, clearly what I could say could hurt somebody. And I'm actively choosing to be selfish about this and say it. And I'm mostly speaking about like issues towards women in particular. And I recognize that I came to this point where I had to learn how to grow from that, how to be like, you know what? I don't want to say this anymore. I don't want to say this or do that because I've come to understand what it means to other people. Anyways, I'm kind of rambling on here, but what I'm getting at is the movement where a lot of men are really feeling uncomfortable right now is because they're being called out on a lot of these activities and practices that, if I can be bold, we've always known they were wrong. But now that they're being called out, it makes us feel very uncomfortable on a daily basis. And I think it's forcing people to really like come to terms with those choices on how they behave. Anyways, continuing on with this ramble. Sorry, go ahead.
I mean, I think that that's the great thing about my generation is that we're especially, I mean, I don't even like to think about it in terms of men and women because there are so many genders. And I think that that's actually a very limiting belief to just kind of keep it binary. I think that gender is a very non-binary thing wherever you fall on that spectrum. I mean, my pronouns are she, her. But I know a lot of people who have recently come to the realization that the pronouns they were assigned at birth are not their pronouns. And I think that these issues really come from a place of, I like to see it as more of like a patriarchy, sort of like the thing that I'm fighting against in my life, experiencing life as a white woman, being a white woman. I find that what I'm going against is the white male patriarchy because it's the old, I think a lot of us see, for example, on Instagram or on TikTok or whatever social media platform we're on, we often see the hashtag vintage style, not vintage values. It's the vintage values part that's the problem. I think that anyone, regardless of race, gender, you know, where you are, how old you are, any of that, it comes down to values, right? So if your core value and your core belief system is, you know, 1960s middle American, even if you are, you know, someone who identifies as a person of color, identifies as a man or a woman or anything, if your value system comes from there, you are going to make bad decisions about how to treat other people because that was an oppressive system of values, anti-person of color, anti-woman, anti-really anyone who wasn't a white man. So that kind of is what is coming to the surface for me. I make mistakes. I get things wrong. I see things that aren't right. I like to come at those situations as teachable moments so that I can learn. And I don't really see myself as an educator, but I see my work.
You kind of are though, in a way. I'm giving you credit.
Yeah. I think so. I think so. Yeah. I think so. I want my work to be educational. I want my songs, I want my art, and I really want it to kind of, okay, now we're going to go really, really, really super far left. I definitely had experiences with my dad when I was younger, where he was like, listen, just accept that you're probably not going to be able to do that and move on. And I dug my heels in and said, absolutely not, Dad. I'm going to be a superstar and I'm going to be a jewelry dealer and I'm going to have all the houses that I want. And I'm going to do all of this. And like 4% of it was just to spite him, even though I love him and he knows that. And I love him to the end of the earth. Sometimes it does help you when you have somebody say, I don't think you can do that.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, here's the thing. Like, I love everything that you're saying. And no, it's true. Cause I love hearing someone like you say things like this because it's necessary. And I think I'm telling you a little bit about my backstory, and I don't want to like chime away from your story because
I really do want to hear. I really am interested.
Well, here's what's interesting, and all of our stories are interesting, right? But for me, you know, being Hispanic, I was predominantly raised by my two sisters. You know, my mom being the matriarch of the family, because in my family dynamic, it's my mom, my dad, my oldest brother, two sisters, and me. Family of 6. I never really talked about this. I've kind of opened up about it in other episodes, but I guess this is the one, and I think it's the perfect one. With my family, my dad was always at work, but he pretty much was not a very dominant figure in my family. My mom was. Excuse me. She was the one who kind of ran the family. My brother, being the oldest, was never really there. He was kind of doing his own thing, but you know, we had a relationship. So I was raised by my two oldest sisters, and I had this very interesting dynamic growing up that my oldest sister was in college and then my other sister was about 2 grades above from me. And I was able to see them grow up facing these issues in life. And my oldest sister, who was in college when I was like in middle school, she would sit me down and tell me all the time the issues that she was going through, issues with men, issues with life, how she was treated in the workplace, how like all these things. And I in a way was lucky and very fortunate to grow up being raised by my sister. But here's what's fascinating, because I didn't really have a dominant male figure in my life. It's not that I was feminine growing up. I just didn't really know what being a guy was. So I would go to school, and now that I'm older, I understand why I did this. I'm a Scorpio. I'm a very observant person. Everything about me, I observe and I learn. As a kid,
you and I are going to be besties. I'm a Pisces.
Oh, there you go. Look at that. We're gonna have to like just hang out for some time and see what happens. But here's the thing. Like,
yeah,
I didn't know I was doing this at the time. I figured this out when I was an adult. As a kid, especially in middle school, I didn't know how to act like a guy, and people would make fun of me for it. I wasn't strictly feminine. I just wasn't like every other guy. But I learned a lot in the locker room. I would observe what other guys would do, what they were told what to do. I wasn't told any of this. My dad didn't. My brother didn't. At home, I was around my sisters and my mom. So at school, every day, I would sit there and I would just take in what other guys did. And what I learned is that most guys, in a way, are similar. They don't know I don't want to say what's right. It's very much like, okay, what do guys do? Oh, we make fun of this. Ha ha ha. Let's make fun of that. There's this weird tribal mentality that guys go through, especially from a young age. And as I got older, I recognized that I did have a unique way of behaving and a way of thinking, that I'm very more perceptive about a lot of these things. And as a grown up now, that we're going through the movements that we're going through, I recognize those moments as a kid, like, oh, I understand now. A lot of kids, a lot of guys, I don't want to say all of them, and I can't speak for all of them, but I imagine a handful of them understood from a long time ago that their behavior, things that are going on in the world are not good. But it's that tribal mentality that it's been embedded in you from age 12 and up that you can't break away from. And it causes people to behave in ways that they normally wouldn't, but they have just kind of blended into that tribal mentality, if that makes sense. And what I love about this movement and this place and time that we're in is that people are speaking up from different sides of the aisle. Bimbo Talk is an example that I want to explore more because I think it's necessary. People that don't consider themselves educated, but want to just speak out. It makes men, and I'm speaking about men because I'm a guy, so I can kind of speak based on my experience. It makes us feel uncomfortable. And I think it encourages growth. Growth is always uncomfortable, but it's, in my opinion, I welcome it always because it makes me a better person. And I can see why there are so many people, guys specifically, who feel very uncomfortable right now. But in my opinion, it's necessary, absolutely necessary, because there's so much shit that goes on, especially with women. And I can't tell you all the times that, my sister would tell me all the things that guys would do. And I learned that. And so I don't know what I'm trying to say, but what I'm getting at is people like you, people on TikTok, people wherever, who use their platform, who use their music, who use their store, who use their knowledge, whatever, to bring forward attention on what's happening. It's part of the solution, because unfortunately, many of us 90s kids still grew up with this tribal mentality, and it takes repetition. It takes that persistence of the problem being in your face so that we can change it. Otherwise, it's just going to continue to be internalized. And luckily, I do feel like the generation that's coming up is a little more open-minded to everything, to different genders, racism is bad, like that whole thing. But honestly, growing up 30 years ago, I can see why so many people just fell into that tribal mentality. I'm not sure if what I'm saying is making sense to you, but what I'm getting at is I think it's a good thing what you're doing. It's necessary.
I think that it's kind of, I think it's a little bit, I think everybody's always known that racism and sexism are bad. Mm-hmm. I think that there's just never been such, a fucking internet wide call out. I mean, now we have the internet, so there can just be this universal call out. Like you said you're a 90s kid, and it's kind of like, I know that all of the 90s kids know that racism is bad, obviously, but like the balls to be like, it's bad and it's bad enough that we're going to fucking riot. Like that's a Gen Z thing, I think.
Yeah.
And that's where accountability lives. I mean, accountability kind of is a violent thing. Like, you know, you have to hold that accountability. It's not just accountability means nothing if there's no one there to enforce it. And the amazing thing about Gen Z is that across the board, you cannot look away from this. You have to look this beast in the eyes and live with it. You have to sleep well at night, you know, knowing that you did everything that you could to put injustice in the ground. And like, I want my very existence to be a thorn in the side of conservatives. Like, I want my incredible success to just be something that bothers them, because I'm a girl from Brooklyn, leftist, Jewish heritage, and I'm winning. And that bothers people. And I love that it bothers people, because that is that antiquated morality system.
Yeah. Can I ask you in specifics, do you ever wonder why it bothers people, like deep down at the core? Obviously, I think we know what we've been discussing, you know, with the way ancient mentality is. But have you ever sat there to just really ponder, why does it bother so many, like, why would it bother so many people to see someone like you, who is free, who is successful, who is wealthy, who is knowledgeable, who is in music? Why does that bother so many people, in your opinion?
Well, I think
do you ever think about it?
Yeah. I mean, I think it bothers them twofold. The first one is the first thing is that they can't own me and they can't sleep with me. So that's a problem from the get-go for people, because I think historically women have very much so been chattel. You know, we've been traded and we've always sort of been told what to do. And now that we really have our own goals and our own lives, and it upsets kind of the
establishment.
It bucks the establishment in a very wild way. I have my company. I have made it my mission to hire women of color, to hire people to hold positions that maybe don't have formal education in those positions, but who are incredibly brilliant and who are going to approach it in an entirely different manner. I mean, I don't run a tech startup. I run an Instagram-based business, but like, I'm innovating and I'm working really hard every day to create something incredible. And I think that a lot of people are jealous that they're not willing to work as hard as some others are.
Yes, that's what it is. Yeah, it's that responsibility. That I feel like that's something that it really hits hard when you start to recognize that you are the one responsible for where you're currently at. And that's not talking about things out of our control, obviously. Like if there's a storm or someone passes away, I get that. But I think in reality, what's happening right now is that there is this huge sense of self-awareness being pushed on a lot of people, not everybody, but a lot of people. And I think in general, most of us, and I want to put myself in that category because I don't want to ever be above growth. But I want to admit, sometimes when I'm presented with my own shit, it's hard to deal with. But then I have to be conscious enough to know that, hey, I'm either going to choose to fix this or not. And I have to be okay with that decision that I don't want to fix this. And I think that's what's happening when you see people misbehave. I hate to use this term, but you know, like when you see someone being called out as like a Karen or something like that. That's in my opinion. I don't know these people personally and I haven't dug enough. So guys, don't get mad at me. I'm not a researcher in this, but in my opinion, my honest opinion, when I see that, that's someone who I would argue knows their issues, but actively chooses to ignore them. And I think once you've been presented with them, you can choose to grow. Can I ask you, I want to take a sidestep here. Hopefully you don't mind. We are reaching like an hour mark. Are you on a time constraint? Can we keep chatting or should we start wrapping this up soon?
I mean, I can go another 15 minutes.
Okay, so we'll start wrapping it up soon. We'll start talking about music. I apologize that this completely went off in a different direction. But I mean,
this has been so cool, and like we're in sort of like we're in a socio-political moment right now that I see as I think that we're having a real social revolution. I think it doesn't take an
Yeah.
Einstein to notice that. We really are. And TikTok, which has been the platform that I have so loved, has been on the front lines of that, because it's brought so many of us who are kind of baby millennials to Gen Z. I'm on the cusp. All of that together. Like, I don't know if I'm Gen Z or millennial, like I'm like right on the edge. But like really being in that world is so amazing to see. And I'm really, really excited kind of about the next steps.
Yeah, I'm glad that you are, because I am too. And like I mentioned earlier in the interview, I always appreciate when someone is open about their opinions, because I know it's hard to put on paper, but getting to know your beliefs and what you do in life directly contributes to your artistic vision and what you do. And so I think your fans knowing your passion behind this, I mean, and if I can be 100% blunt with you, Elle, when I looked at your stuff, I loved your music. I thought you looked cool with your fashion choices. I thought, wow, using history, like using a lot of these old school costumes, great, brilliant marketing idea. I love it. And now to know the depth of this, your knowledge in history, the antiques, where you stand with social justice, I mean, that's just the full package right there, to be honest with you. Like, there's so much that contributes to who Elle is. And I love that. And that's why I just want to make sure that no matter where this conversation ends, that you know that I appreciate you being open about this, because it does contribute to why you make music. And God, I wish we had like more hours. We're gonna have to do like a part 2 of this.
Yeah,
if you're open to it at some point.
I'm more than happy to do a part 2. That's true. I think that now I kind of run two. I run 2 businesses now, because I run the music and I run the curio, my jewelry business. And it's like, there's never enough hours in the day, but I do have these thoughts a lot. Like, and I really have tried to take the time, you know, post-education, post-college education, really, which by the way, I think is so important. I support people who decide to drop out of college, because like I said, like I never got my degree or anything, but I understand. I've recently had this thought about how I understand why we don't do, like why we don't, the establishment, you know, we've talked a lot about bucking the establishment. Well, here's my backlash on that. The establishment idea to get educated and then go into your field of work, I understand that now, because I don't think that I would really have the perspective that I have, the experiences that I've been able to accrue, if I hadn't gone through this kind of very lengthy educational process that led me left, right, and center and all across the board. And I tried so many different things. Now I almost feel qualified to speak in this manner, having gone through that. I'm sure I would still have opinions and I would still feel qualified to speak if I hadn't, but I feel a little bit more so having studied so much history and sort of seeing the cyclical nature of it. So that part of the establishment, that kind of checks out for me, and it works for me, and I get that.
Yeah. I think at the end of the day, what is important is to just do what's best for you. And I agree with you completely, 100%. For me, my experience in college, I met some of the people that I do business now. Like, do I remember a lot of things that I learned? I wish I would have studied the things you did, to be honest with you. But for me in particular, like the experience that I got out of it was uniquely for myself. And I think at the end of the day, what's cool about this time that we're living in is that individuality is being promoted more now than ever before. And it's something to be celebrated, because whether you like school, whether you don't like school, whether you like traveling, whether you like making a podcast or making music or fashion, what's beautiful about this time that we're living in is that we're finally able to see in a much wider way. Maybe we've always been able to see, but now it's widespread that you can learn, succeed, and be a good person no matter what you do, no matter where you go, no matter what you study. There is always an opportunity to be amazing at something. And that's the cool aspect of where we're living at now. So I do echo in what you're saying. I do appreciate your experience and you being honest and owning your own experience, because it made you who you are. And for anyone out there who is kind of questioning what to do or where to go, obviously don't take my advice. I'm not a counselor, but I can encourage you to just, trust your gut, trust who you are. And
I mean, I would add to that. it takes 10,000 hours to achieve mastery of something. And I think even if it's something that you are not like, do I really want to do this for the rest of my life? Is this the number one thing? Don't put that kind of pressure on yourself. If you're someone who's listening to this right now and you're really mulling that over, what I would recommend is to just pick something and do it. Because while our time is the only thing that is a finite resource in life, it is the only thing that we will run out of, guaranteed that we're going to run out of in our lifetimes is time. Sometimes going on a journey of accruing 10,000 hours to achieve mastery of something is going to show you more about yourself than it's going to show you about the thing that you're trying to master. Like I have been doing music now since I was a baby. I mean, I started when I was 3. And I really, really, really struggled in the beginning. I, to this day, probably have a self-consciousness where I don't believe that I am truly a musician because I don't know theory. But
oh, screw that. You don't need theory anymore.
I know. It's right. Exactly. But it is something that I feel a little self-conscious about. But I'm always telling myself, no, you've put in your 10,000 hours, keep putting in more to really get that mastery. So that's my 2 cents on that.
Great 2 cents. And you know what? I commend you for being aware of that, because I can see how that can be a bit of a stumbling block. If I can be honest, like I got the whole, not full education, but I did learn about theory and music. And if I can be honest with you, in a way, it stumbled me. Like it made me stumble. Like when I was really trying to, when I was starting out in my drumming career and stuff, what music theory did for me and music education, and this is not everyone's experience, but it is a common experience with a lot of musicians that I've talked to. What it does is that it provides you this rule book, but it doesn't, a lot of teachers don't know how to teach you to be free with it. They tell you, here are the rules, now go make music. And now all of a sudden you're in the world and you've lost your creativity and you have this rule book and now you're upset all the time for not following the rules. That was me. It took me years to break free from those rules. And the partner that I currently work with, I have an amazing production partner. She's like you, has no musical education. She's a brilliant singer, brilliant songwriter. And the places that she goes musically are stuff that are not in the rule books, are stuff that by all intents and purposes should not work, but she finds a way to make it work. And I sit there, I'm like, God damn, I have years of theory. Not once did it teach me this, but yet it works. And that's like the beauty of it all, is that there's this combined effort between us. But my whole point is, for you specifically, I think your life story and your career shows what can be done. Like you said, when you put that 10,000 hours in and you just choose to do something because you want to do it, you can always do it. There's millions of ways to do the same thing. And as long as you're being true to you, like you've been, cool things happen. And that's, I don't know. I know I keep saying the same thing over and over, but I really am grateful that you have been on the show today, because I've learned so much from you. You clearly are brilliant. I never mind learning from smart people like you, because I feel smarter after I'm done talking to you.
I am overwhelmed. Thank you. Thank you so much. I mean, we definitely need to do a part 2 to this conversation, because I feel like we didn't really even kind of, if you were tuning in today to hear about Mesoamerican blood chocolate rituals and Marie Antoinette, this was your day. But if that's not what you were here for and you're here for the music, well,
you know what? I'm grateful that I've cultivated an audience that likes this. Every single conversation I have is very different. Yeah. And you're definitely amongst one of those that brings something new to the table. You're going to make a lot of people learn a lot of new stuff. And that's the important thing. And this is Elle, guys. This is why she does what she does. And when you look at her TikTok, when you look at her videos, now you understand why the visuals are the way they are. It's so cool. And I just, again, we're going to have to do a part 2. I don't want to waste your time too much. Can you just let me know a little bit of what you've got going on? Do you have any new music coming out now that the pandemic is technically over, at least keeping our fingers crossed that it is for good? Do you have any shows? Like, what do you got going on music wise?
Okay. So first of all, before we do all of that, I want to ask our amazing listeners today, if I did say something, or if I taught you something, or if you learned something that really had value to you, can you just like DM me on Instagram and like let me know? And if you have like a rando history fact that you want me to know, can you send it to me? Because I would be so excited to know that I was able to kind of like be in your community and pop something interesting into your life. It's just at ELLE LEXXA. If you want to do that. Now I don't know, that's really important to me. I really like to have an open dialogue with everybody who's consuming my content. So now that I've said that, what I will say is I have pivoted on all of the next steps for me, like maybe 4 times in the past 6 months, because I had an idea of exactly what I wanted to put out. I wrote this song. I loved it. I was super psyched about it. But then it turned out we needed a sample clearance, so I couldn't put it out. So I was like, fuck it.
Those suck.
I know.
Suck. Yeah.
It does. I was like, fuck it. Back to basics. Here's what I want to do. My manager is going to get so upset at me for telling you, but I'm going to tell you anyway. Sorry, JD. I love you.
That's awesome.
I said, I want to go very much back to basics. I want to show my musicality. I want to pay homage to my musicality, what I grew up listening to. I grew up listening to my mom's record collection, and there were like 3 things that the record collection focused on. She had like Nina Simone and Billie Holiday records, which I love. I learned how to use a record player when I was 6, and I was so excited about this. She also had a huge collection of classical, like she had Mozart, Shostakovich, she had classical music. And lastly, she had every single Supremes record. I learned how to sing from Diana Ross.
Oh, that's so cool.
That was what I listened to. So I said, okay, I want to do an acoustic record. And I have, I can't tell you what they are, but I have 2 songs that I'm doing, like kind of this very Nina Simone, Diana Ross inspired, you know, like my vocal technique. And then I'm also releasing 2 acoustic covers of 2 of my most well-known songs, Hostage and New Year's Eve. And lastly, a new one. The new song is called Licorice, and it just fit the set. So yeah, I'm going to drop that probably mid-August.
That's awesome. And any shows? Do you have any like live streams or any plans to do that at all?
I plan to do nothing but shows in the year of 2022.
Nice.
But I don't have anything yet. So
you're gonna bring any vintage bowls or anything? Have a nice ceremony right there.
Are you kidding me? I literally want my live shows to be rituals. And if you do come to one of my live shows, I mean, first of all, Eddie, I hope you will come to one of my live shows when
I want to for sure.
When I come out west. But I want people to wear like their most magical garb to my shows. Whatever you have in your wardrobe that screams magic, that's what I want, because my shows, I plan on them being rituals to kind of like the musical gods. That's my aesthetic.
Oh, that is so awesome. Dude, I'm totally there. I don't know what I have that's magical. I have some fashionable stuff. I don't know if it's magical, but I'll put something together.
We're gonna have to get you a cravat. I'm gonna send you a cravat. That's, I think, the next step in your wardrobe.
Do you want to be my stylist? That'd be cool.
Are you kidding me? I'm seeing it like it's a cream and maybe like purple pinstripe cravat.
Oh, I can pull that off.
Yeah.
Oh, hell yeah.
Yeah. That's exactly. I'm going to go find one. I'm going to go source one.
Dude, you are awesome. Elle, thank you so much for joining me on this episode. We're going to have a part 2, guys, definitely sometime down the line, because we need more of you on the show. So please keep your schedule open, because we need to keep this conversation going. But you're a busy woman. You're a successful woman. You're an amazing human being. You've got stuff to do. So I want to make sure that I give you enough time to do that stuff. But I want to just say thank you. You're awesome. Thank you for being on the show. You're so cool.
Thank you so much. And I was so happy to be here. I hope you have the most wonderful, wonderful rest of your day. And yeah, let's talk soon.